So next topic, I wanted to get into because I think it was a Fightful Select reported earlier this week that Jonathan Gresham, his contract with TNA is coming up due. We already know that Josh Alexander's contract is coming up due, I think in February or March timeframe. Jordan Grace is looking like she's going to be leaving TNA, very possibly in January. And I think we all know that she's being earmarked for WWE. I think it's only a matter of time before she's in WWE. People think that Joe Hendry is going to be there before too long, but I think Joe Hendry is probably going to be around until the end of next year, to be honest with you. So I think he'll probably be there through the end of 2025 or towards the end of 2025. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But there was a lot of dooming again among a lot of people who don't really watch TNA. so it happens like 2 or 3 times a year because contracts will come up due and then like, oh, well, how is TNA ever going to financially recover from this? You know, like earlier this year, Scott D'Amore got fired and then they lost the Motor City Machine Guns. And then subsequently, they ended up having some of the best houses that they've ever done, the best pay-per-views they've ever done. Now it looks like very possibly, Jordan Grace, I'm going to go ahead and say she's out. I'm going to go ahead and put very possible Jonathan Gresham and Josh Alexander are out. Very possible. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying it's possible. So what I want everybody to do is to relax. We don't like, even if they do leave, people leave this company every 6 months. This roster refreshes all the time. Most of their deals are very short-term deals anyway by design because they're constantly refreshing it. That's just what they do. Hold on, I've had the wrong thing up this whole time. But that's just what they do. So I guess my question to JD is, do you think that, say Jonathan Gresham does leave, and I think it's a very real possibility because I don't think he's really contributed a lot to TNA to begin with.
Surprisingly.
They just don't know what to do with him, which is weird because Delirious is on the creative team. And you think if anybody out there that could do something with Jonathan Gresham, it would be the guy that made him the world champion, right?
Did you watch those Ring of Honor shows?
I didn't watch the weekly shows, but I watched their bigger shows, and I was always really impressed by Jonathan Gresham as the champ. He didn't win the championship like the very end, but I liked the foundation. I thought that was a cool character. I thought that was a cool group, and I liked when he won the title. I loved that match. That was really cool.
Yeah, matches. I mean, you weren't watching the weekly TV was really bad. That's the thing about old Ring of Honors. TV really was bad. For a good chunk of Ring of Honor's existence, their TV show was not good. It was not week-to-week storytelling. It was not typical American. It was just good matches. So that's why, like, I crapped on Delirious on our old show specifically many, many times as a booker. Yeah. Now, here's the thing, like you were talking about before. I'm going to address this first. TNA fans, you ever that line in the Avengers, right, where Bruce Banner says that's the key to being the Hulk because he's always angry? TNA fans live in a constant state of chaos, and they're used to it. Like, you can always tell the people who don't follow TNA because they're the ones who are like, oh, man, things are getting bad. TNA fans are like, oh, whatever, it's what we do. Yeah. You know, they don't care. They're remarkably loyal. They're going to watch whoever's on the – they're going to be 20 people you've never heard of in TNA next year, and they're still going to watch the show. So – it's fine. Do I think now? What was the question about Jonathan Gresham? Where do I think he's going to go, or do I think what now?
Do we think the AEW will take him back after?
No, I don't.
You don't think so? Because I felt like he did a pretty good job of getting out there in the media and kind of taking ownership of what happened, and then going so far as to say, "Look, I've actually sought out therapy. I've apologized. I'm trying to move forward, trying to be a better guy. All this and that." As far as I know, he hasn't had any incidents in TNA. TNA just didn't know what to do with the guy because he's very much just like a good match guy.
I think he's hard to program because like he's small and he doesn't have a ton of personality. True. And his matches are very grapple based. And like sometimes that doesn't work well on TV wrestling. Pay-per-view wrestling, pretty good, but like week to week TV wrestling, trickier. I think Jonathan Gresham is a very hard guy to program in an American television company. And I think he's got a better chance of following his wife, to be quite frank. I think we have a better chance of seeing Jonathan Gresham in NXT.
I could see that. If I'm Tony Khan, do I bring him into Ring of Honor? I wouldn't be against it, but because I do think he's a really good talent, and I think that he would just do fine there.
I think so too. I think he's gonna have people advocating for him. I think Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt are gonna be like, hey man, I think we should give Gresham another chance. I think they're going to say that I think he will have plenty of people advocating for him. And Tony's a nice guy to an extent, but that guy really burned some. I mean, I don't know if he burned some bridges, but he said some interesting things. And like at the same time, if you bring him in and you don't push him, like, I don't know. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Well, I can say he's done just fine in TNA without being pushed because he doesn't do shit. He hardly wins. But
yeah, but in TNA he didn't have a meltdown.
That's true. That's true. Well, hey guys, I've been stalling enough. Our guy is here, Ibou of WrestlePurists. Welcome to the show, Ibou. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, guys. I always try to fit some time for Mike and JD when I'm asked, and I literally just got home a couple minutes ago. Was racing home from work, and I'm glad you guys are still on. I was listening in the last 2 minutes there, so I came in on some good conversation about Gresham and TNA. But I'm happy to hang out here. I'm going to try to stick around for a little bit, and I'm cool with wherever this thing goes, man. I was just listening in on the Gresham talk, and it took me back immediately because I don't know if you guys know this. I spoke to John live on air like 2 days before he quit AEW or quit Ring of Honor or whatever he was officially signed to, right?
Yeah.
But in that live interview conversation I had with John, it was very clear that this wasn't going to be a long partnership because I'm talking to him and I'm asking him various questions like, hey, like, have you been getting any instruction behind the scenes and like, what's the direction of your character and how is what you do going to fit in this setting? And have you had conversations with Tony Khan and is there an understanding about what he wants from you? And a lot of what I was met with was exasperation and or a lack of clarity on his end about what's going on.
Yeah.
And I could tell it was coming from a place of confusion and frustration. And so you couple that with the fact that I remember that Ring of Honor show, it was Death Before Dishonor 2022, where he walks out there, boo-boo face.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? Clearly wasn't happy. They threw Nana on him where he found out that he was going to be paired with Nana like the day of. And he loses the match very unceremoniously. And we find out later that he pretty much, quit and kind of went off on Tony Khan. Didn't surprise me just off the energy when I was talking to him a couple days earlier. I was like, this isn't a guy that like is feeling what's going on right now. And I tweeted about Jonathan a couple of days ago when the word came out that his deal was expiring. I actually asked people within TNA, and I got a quick answer on when the expiration date is coming out. It's going to be in January 2025. And I tweeted this. I think Jonathan is really, really talented. I thought in the pandemic he was one of the best wrestlers in America.
Me too.
And the funny thing about it, JD, is I watched that pandemic ROH TV, and it was one of those funny things where I got a real kick out of like Jonathan Gresham in the Pure tournament, but it was in that way where I'm like, this is for nobody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like I can't see this appealing to like a lot of people, but I kind of dig it. But I tweeted that basically I don't think any wrestling company has really gotten him since the dissolution of the Sinclair Ring of Honor. And it's kind of unfortunate. Like I thought TNA would be a good landing spot for him. And that hasn't really kind of materialized. I don't really know what to say about this run.
No,
but,
it hasn't really been a good run. He did get a world title shot at one point with Alex Shelley, and that match was awesome. But it was, again, like you said, Ibou, it was for nobody. It was, what I mean?
That was hard to kill, right? Hard to kill 2022, right?
No, so he wrestled Sabin before he had actually come and signed on. He wrestled Sabin in between runs, but he actually, it was a TV match. He wrestled Shelley on while Shelley was the champion. They did that, and then he took off for a little bit, and he came back, and he was wearing a mask, and he was doing a great Muda gimmick, but instead of spitting the ink, he was coughing the ink, like the mist, onto his hands and rubbing it onto people, and then it turns into an infectious disease. It was weird. Jimmy Jacobs then ends up going to AEW, so I don't know.
And then didn't Kushida cook up like some concoction to like neutralize this virus that Gresham was spreading onto people?
To his credit, Kushida, JD, you're gonna like this. To his credit, Kushida then flew to Japan and met with some of the top scientists and got an antidote to
Right.
Jonathan Gresham's ink, brought it back, and then that's how he lost his magical powers. And the next thing you know, he takes the fucking mask off and he's just back wrestling as Jonathan Gresham again.
You know, people gave me shit for not wanting to do Brace for Impact anymore. And every time you talk about something, it just verifies and validates my feelings that I can't watch this shit. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I
But
can
then,
see the dread overcoming you, you know?
yeah, it's brutal. But then like he did all of that, and then he gets rid of the mask and he comes back, and then he has like a badass match with Charlie Dempsey, which was excellent. And he actually ends up having a really good match with Kushida. And I think just recently he had another really good match with the guy. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's had some good matches. But that's the problem with Gresham is like, how do you program him into a storyline? It's a very difficult thing to do, which is why I was curious if Tony Khan would even be willing to bring the guy back.
Well, you guys kind of touched on it there in the sense that it would require a level of creative dedication and effort that I don't think he's willing to attribute to Jonathan, because I think the world of him. And if I was running my own promotion, I'd feature him in something notable. But if you're Tony Khan and you have, you know, what's like, look at what's on his plate when it comes to like the people he needs to prioritize and focus on.
Mhm.
And it's like a man telling him right now in a creative meeting, all right, dude, so I think we need to come up with a really extensive game plan for Jonathan Gresham. He would tell you to go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
So it's you know,
Yeah.
The funny thing about it is, to me, you know, I'm of the mindset that Jonathan Gresham in my promotion would be the guy that you accentuate what he is good at. You allow him to talk about things he believes in. And so when he was the foundation in Ring of Honor, he had the whole thing of like, and this sport has been overrun by things that are just antithetical to the essence of the sport. Him and Jay Lethal would talk about how, you know, Ring of Honor is overrun by violence and anarchy and this and that, and how we would restore the purity of wrestling, you know. And Jonathan Gresham very much believes in all those things. He's a believer of just wrestling done the old way and adhering to the rules and so on and so forth. Even the little things where there's punches and rope breaks. That's why he was so great with the pure title. So I say all this to say, you would have a guy like that essentially being the pariah, the guy who kind of is like the guy shouting at the clouds, so to speak, and you draw the contrast. It's just, I don't know what promotion exists right now in America, or any notable one, or anyone with a TV deal where you could kind of plug him in and make that important. Which is, again, that's why I say, like, TNA, you would have thought like that would have been the company. You would have thought that's the spot where he could kind of stand out and do that whole thing. You know, and there was even, I remember he did like a couple sit down interviews on the show where he kind of like expressed these views and stuff, and like that didn't really lead to anything from what I saw. And that's when he went in a sports entertainment direction, and that wasn't great. So I don't know. I'll tell you this. I suggested to somebody who would get the word out to Jonathan that why doesn't he try Mexico? You know, because in my view, I think with his Yave background, he would be tremendous in CMLL.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
you know,
well,
I don't know
the other match that I couldn't remember off the top of my head was that he had that was in TNA that was really good was actually Laredo Kid. They actually had a really good match recently. So
see that checks out. You know what I mean? Like, of course, that's going to be a really good match.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he's going to do. And the other thing, I saw WWE fans tweeting like, "Hey man, is he good?" And I could tell what the line of thinking was, because they were going to try to psych themselves up for a WWE Jonathan Gresham run. And in my head, I'm like, dude, you don't want that. You know what I mean? Like, you really don't want that. That's like, he's way too short. He doesn't like, he'd be swimming upstream over there the entire time. It's just, it would be a bad marriage from the start.
The only thing I think of is he goes over with Jordan and he does some player coach stuff in NXT.
Yeah.
Well, and he's actually currently with it. This is weird, JD. You'll get a kick out of this. Jonathan Gresham is actually booking Memphis right now. And he's booking Memphis, and he's in a feud with Jay Lethal. I'm actually going to want to check that out because I thought their matches in Ring of Honor were pretty good. So I think I want to check out what Jonathan Gresham's booking in Memphis with Jay Lethal.
Just had a 1986 flashback when you were saying that. That's fascinating.